In a stunning geopolitical pivot that has sent shockwaves through the African continent and beyond, Uganda has announced its intention to join the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, the burgeoning confederation of military-led nations in West Africa's Sahel region. The move, revealed in a late-night address by President Yoweri Museveni, positions the East African powerhouse as the first non-Sahelian country to align with the AES, a bloc originally formed by Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger in 2023 amid a wave of anti-colonial coups and a decisive break from Western influence. The AES, often dubbed the anti-imperialist axis by its supporters, has rapidly evolved from a mutual defense pact into a full-fledged confederation promoting Pan-African sovereignty, economic integration, and resistance to foreign meddling. With shared passports, a joint military force of 5,000 troops, and plans for a common currency, the alliance has already rattled traditional power structures in Africa. Uganda's entry, if formalized, could expand the AES's footprint dramatically, bridging East and West Africa and potentially drawing in other nations disillusioned with organizations like the African Union, AU, and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. President Museveni's announcement came amid escalating tensions in Uganda's domestic politics, where opposition figures have accused the long-ruling leader of using the AES affiliation to consolidate power and deflect from economic woes. This is not just an alliance, it's a rebirth for Africa, Museveni declared in his televised speech. For too long, we've been pawns in the games of the West. Joining the AES means reclaiming our destiny, fighting terrorism on our terms, and building an Africa free from neo-colonial chains. Sources close to the government suggest the decision was influenced by discreet talks with AES leaders, including Burkina Faso's Captain Ibrahim Traore, whose fiery Pan-African rhetoric has resonated with Museveni's own historical anti-imperialist stance. The news has ignited immediate controversy, fracturing alliances across Africa. Within hours, Kenyan President William Ruto condemned the move as reckless adventurism that could destabilize the East African Community, EAC, of which Uganda is a key member. This alliance with junta states risks importing instability to our region, Ruto stated in a press briefing, hinting at potential trade disruptions. Tanzania and Rwanda, Uganda's neighbors, have remained conspicuously silent, but diplomatic cables leaked to regional media indicate frantic behind-the-scenes negotiations to prevent a domino effect. Critics argue that Uganda's involvement could exacerbate ethnic and border tensions, given the AES's focus on combating jihadist insurgencies, issues that echo Uganda's own struggles with groups like the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, in its eastern provinces. On the continental stage, the AU has expressed deep concern, with Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat calling for an emergency summit. ECOWAS, already weakened by the AES's formation and the withdrawal of its founding members, views Uganda's overture as a direct challenge to its authority. This is an attempt to create parallel structures that undermine African unity, an ECOWAS spokesperson said, alluding to fears that more countries, such as Togo or Ghana, might follow suit. Togo, in fact, has been openly flirting with AES membership since 2025, seeking sea access for the landlocked Sahel nations, a prospect that Uganda's strategic position on Lake Victoria could further enhance through trade routes. The real powder keg, however, lies in the intensifying rift with Western powers. The United States and European Union, which have long seen Uganda as a stable ally in East Africa, providing billions in aid for counterterrorism and development, have reacted with outrage. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken labeled the decision a dangerous escalation, warning that it aligns Uganda with authoritarian regimes backed by Russia and China. Indeed, the AES has deepened ties with Moscow, welcoming Russian military advisors and Wagner Group, now Africa Corps, mercenaries after expelling French and American forces. France, still smarting from its ousting from the Sahel, accused Uganda of betraying democratic principles and hinted at sanctions, including freezing assets and visa bans for Ugandan officials. European diplomats point to the AES's anti-Western pivot as a model that's spreading. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have nationalized mines, renegotiated resource deals, and launched media outlets like AES TV to counter foreign narratives. Uganda's oil-rich Albertine Graben region, home to major projects with Total Energies and other Western firms, could become a flashpoint. Analysts speculate that joining the AES might embolden Museveni to demand better terms or even expel foreign operators, echoing Niger's uranium nationalization that slashed French nuclear fuel supplies. Human rights groups have amplified the controversy, decrying the AES as a junta club that shields military rulers from accountability. Amnesty International's Africa director warned that Uganda's alignment could worsen repression, citing recent crackdowns on protesters in Kampala and the AES members' records of media censorship and disappearances. "This isn't Pan-Africanism. It's a shield for autocrats," she said. Meanwhile, pro-AES voices across social media hail it as a second liberation, with hashtags like #AfricaRising trending in Uganda, Nigeria, and South Africa. Economically, the implications are profound. Uganda's economy, reliant on Western aid and exports to Europe, faces potential boycotts. Yet, AES proponents argue it opens doors to alternative partnerships. Russia's Rosatom for nuclear energy, China's Belt and Road for infrastructure, and intra-African trade bypassing dollar dominance. "Why beg from the West when we can build with our brothers?" asked a Ugandan parliamentarian supportive of the move. As protests erupt in Kampala, some in favor, others against, and diplomatic envoys shuttle between capitals, the full ramifications are unfolding. Will this redraw Africa's map, pitting a sovereign bloc against entrenched institutions? Or will it unravel under pressure? The debates rage on, with alliances shifting by the hour. Mere hours after Uganda's seismic announcement, Captain Ibrahim Traore, the 37-year-old firebrand president of Burkina Faso and de facto architect of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, took to a sun-baked podium in Ouagadougou's Central Square for a live broadcast welcome address that has already been dissected, decried, and celebrated across the continent. Flanked by AES flags fluttering alongside Uganda's black, yellow, and red, Traore, clad in his signature fatigues and speaking with the unflinching cadence of a revolutionary poet, extended a fraternal hand to President Yoweri Museveni while unleashing a manifesto of rules that could redefine governance for the bloc's 100 million-plus citizens. Today, Uganda steps into the fire of true sovereignty, Traore boomed to a crowd of thousands, his words crackling through state media and social feeds from Lagos to Nairobi. But fire purifies only if we burn away the rot. These are not suggestions. They are the unbreakable code of the AES. The speech, clocking in at 28 minutes and streamed on the newly launched AES Unity Network, a Pan-African broadcaster funded by pooled Sahel resources, wasn't mere ceremony. It was a gauntlet thrown down, enumerating 5 core principles that all member states, including the freshly aligned Uganda, must enshrine in national policy within 90 days. Traore, drawing from his own playbook of post-coup reforms, where he slashed ministerial perks, nationalized key mines, and dispatched anti-corruption squads, framed these as the Sahel Covenant, a binding framework to shield the alliance from the very pitfalls that have plagued African unity efforts before. But as the echoes fade, the covenant is already fracturing facades, exposing graft in Uganda's corridors of power, challenging billions in Western aid pipelines, and forcing uneasy neighbors to pick sides in what some diplomats are whispering could become Africa's next great schism. Let's unpack the rules one by one, peeling back the layers of ambition, peril, and raw power they unleash. Rule 1. Absolute service to the citizenry. No leader shall feast while the people starve. Traore's opener was a gut punch to elite complacency, mandating that every AES policy, from budget allocations to military deployments, be vetted through citizen assemblies, grassroots forums modeled on Burkina Faso's village committees. The state exists for the farmer in the field, the miner in the pit, the mother at the market. Not for villas in Paris or Geneva, he thundered, invoking the 2023 AES Charter's emphasis on food sovereignty and local manufacturing. In Uganda, this lands like a thunderclap. Museveni's government, long criticized for favoring patronage networks over equitable growth, now faces mandatory transparency audits on projects like the $3.5 billion East African Crude Oil Pipeline, EACOP. Activists in Kampala are already mobilizing assembly watch groups, demanding veto power over deals that displace communities, as seen in the AES's recent Nigerian land reforms that halted foreign agribusiness land grabs. Yet skeptics, including exiled Ugandan opposition leader Bobi Wine, warn this could devolve into staged theater, with rural voices drowned out by regime loyalists. Economically, it's a pivot toward intra-AES trade hubs. Think Ugandan coffee routed through landlocked Sahel ports via new rail links, potentially boosting GDP by 15% in 5 years, per preliminary African Development Bank models. But the rub. Enforcing it requires teeth. Traore hinted at a rotating People's Tribunal with power to impeach officials, a mechanism that's already ousted 2 Burkinabe governors for neglecting drought relief. Rule 2. Zero tolerance for embezzlement. 1 cent stolen is a bullet in the revolution. Here, Traore channeled his infamous 2024 anti-graft crusade, where he personally led dawn raids on luxury homes of corrupt officials, declaring, "Public funds are blood money from the veins of our youth." The covenant demands forensic audits of all state enterprises upon joining, with AES-wide whistleblower hotlines and asset declarations for every leader down to district chiefs. Penalties? Life bans from office, asset seizures funneled back into social programs, and, echoing Burkina Faso's model, public shaming via national broadcasts. For Uganda, this is dynamite. Transparency International ranks the country 142nd globally for corruption, with scandals like the $200 million ghost soldier payments in the army rotting public trust. Museveni's inner circle, accused of siphoning oil revenues, could see freezes on offshore accounts, especially as AES tech partners from Russia roll out blockchain trackers for budgets. Pro-AES youth in Entebbe hailed it as Traore's broom sweeping Kampala clean, but whispers from State House suggest quiet resistance. Museveni, 81 and battle-hardened, has hedged by promising Uganda-first adaptations. The deeper tremor? This rule could cascade. Nigerian analysts, watching from Abuja, fear it might embolden ECOWAS dissidents like those in the Bring Back Our Sahel movement, pressuring Lagos to audit its own $2 billion subsidy scams or risk AES-style isolation. Rule 3. Severing blind ties with the West. No more beggar bowls at imperial gates. The speech's incendiary core, this principle bars unconditional alliances with Western entities, requiring all foreign deals to undergo AES veto for sovereignty impact. Traore eviscerated France's CFA franc shackles and US AFRICOM bases as leashes disguised as aid, urging members to diversify toward BRICS partners, Russia for arms, China for rails, India for pharma. Blind ties breed blind leaders, he spat, referencing the AES's 2025 expulsion of French troops from Mali, which slashed influence but spiked jihadist attacks by 40% in border zones. Uganda's stake? Its $1.2 billion annual U.S. aid for anti-ADF ops now hangs by a thread, with Blinken already tabling a democracy clause in Congress to claw it back. French firm Total Energies, pumping Uganda's Lake Albert oil, faces renegotiation demands akin to Niger's uranium heist, potentially hiking royalties to 60% for locals. European envoys in Addis Ababa are apoplectic, branding it economic suicide, while Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov praised it as a multipolar masterstroke. In Port Harcourt's oil-rich delta, Nigerian youth activists, echoing #EndSARS echoes, are trending #Traore to Lagos, debating if this could force a reckoning on Shell spills and ExxonMobil's grip. Traore wove in 2 ancillary edicts: mandatory youth quotas in cabinets, at least 40%, drawn from anti-corruption academies, and a resource repatriation fund to claw back looted assets, seeded with AES gold reserves. The crowd erupted, but not without undercurrents. Women's groups in Niamey decried the military-heavy tone, demanding gender parity in tribunals, while Tuareg elders in northern Mali fretted over centralization eroding nomadic rights. The backlash is biblical. In Washington, a bipartisan Senate hearing branded Traore Africa's Putin, with sanctions floated against Ugandan banks. France's Macron, in a leaked Élysée memo, called the rules a junta's fever dream, vowing to rally democratic African states via the G7. Closer to home, Kenya's Ruto doubled down, threatening EAC trade halts, while South Africa's Ramaphosa urged AU mediation, privately confiding to envoys that this could splinter us like Sudan. Yet in the streets, it's electric. #AES Covenant is exploding on X, with Burkinabe memes of Traore as a broom-wielding Sankara 2.0 and Ugandan TikToks reenacting embezzler trials. Nigerian clerics in Kano invoke it as Quranic justice against elite theft, but Lagos traders panic over potential CFA devaluation ripples hitting Naira. As Traore signed off, the AES is not a club for kings. It's a forge for warriors. Virtual handshakes with Museveni lit up screens, but the forge is overheating. Will these rules forge unbreakable bonds, or shatter under the weight of old habits and external hammers? Diplomatic cables fly, markets jitter, and assembly calls echo from Ouagadougou to Kampala. Covenant still settles in Ouagadougou. Mali's iron-fisted interim leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, seized the microphone in Bamako's Place de la Nation for a blistering address that ratcheted the AES welcome frenzy to fever pitch. Goïta, the 43-year-old coup architect who stormed to power in 2020 and 2021, channeling the ghosts of Sankara and Lumumba, didn't just echo Traore's rules. He amplified them into a clarion call for Africa's final liberation war. With Ugandan flags hoisted beside Mali's green, gold, and red, and a phalanx of AES troops in crisp desert camo standing sentinel, Goïta's 35-minute oration, broadcast on Mali's rebranded Liberté FM and simulcast across the bloc's nascent satellite network, framed Uganda's accession not as diplomacy, but as the spark igniting a pan-continental bonfire to torch neo-colonial embers. "Brothers and sisters of Uganda, you have crossed the Rubicon," Goïta proclaimed, his voice gravelly from years of Sahel dust and defiance. "The AES is no mere alliance. It's the hammer to shatter the chains that bind our necks to Paris, London, and Washington. Today, we welcome you not as guests, but as warriors in the battle to end the plunder that has bled Africa dry for 7 centuries." Goïta's speech, delivered under a scorching midday sun to a sea of 20,000 flag-waving supporters. Many bussed in from jihadist-ravaged northern outposts, built on Traore's foundation but veered into visceral territory, weaving personal anecdotes from Mali's anti-French uprising with blueprints for an AES liberation doctrine. Unlike Traore's procedural covenant, Goïta's address was a rhetorical Molotov, dissecting neo-colonialism's tentacles with surgical fury while outlining operational mandates that could append trade pacts from the Maghreb to the Horn. He invoked the 1960s independence betrayals, how Belgium's claws lingered in Congo's cobalt, France's in Ivory Coast's cocoa, positioning the AES as the antidote, a sovereign fortress where resources fuel African dreams, not European luxuries. For Uganda, this welcome is a double-edged spear. Museveni's regime gains a shield against Western isolation, but at the cost of auditing its own neo-colonial complicity, from British-era land laws to US-funded surveillance tech in Kampala streets. Diving into the doctrine's marrow, Goïta unfurled 3 interlocking pillars, each a dagger aimed at the heart of external dominance, laced with timelines that demand Uganda's immediate compliance. Pillar 1. Resource sovereignty. Reclaim the veins of our earth. Goïta's opener was a blood-soaked ledger of extraction. Mali's gold mines, once French fiefdoms, now forge our future. Niger's uranium powers our lights, not Macron's reactors. Uganda's oil will anoint African machines, not Total's coffers. He decreed that all AES members audit foreign concessions within 60 days, mandating 70% local ownership and profit-sharing clauses tied to community funds, echoing Mali's 2024 nationalization of Barrick Gold's Loulo-Gounkoto complex, which repatriated $800 million and funded rural electrification. In Uganda, this strikes at the ECOP's core. The French-Italian consortium's deal, already mired in environmental lawsuits from Bunyoro villagers, now faces sovereignty reviews that could slash expatriate quotas and hike taxes on exports routed through Tanzanian ports. Goïta name-dropped Museveni's 1986 Bush War as proof of Ugandan resolve, urging Kampala to redirect oil royalties toward AES-wide initiatives like a Sahel East rail corridor, potentially slashing transport costs by 40% and funneling Ugandan maize to Malian markets starved by sanctions. But the shadows loom. Malian Tuareg militias, wary of centralization, have already protested in Kidal, fearing resource grabs echo the very colonial divides Goïta rails against. In Port Harcourt's oil-slicked creeks, Nigerian activists, watching via grainy streams on WhatsApp groups, see a mirror. If Mali can boot the French from uranium, why not us from Shell? One Delta youth leader tweeted, igniting #AESTO Niger Delta debates that could pressure Abuja's own $50 billion JV renegotiations. Pillar 2. Military autonomy. No foreign boots on sacred soil. Transitioning to the drumbeat of a live Kora ensemble, Goïta eviscerated imperial garrisons as the neo-colonial vanguard. AFRICOM and Djibouti spies on our herders. Barkhane's ghosts haunt Timbuktu's sands, but no more. The doctrine calls for a unified AES command structure, with Uganda contributing 2,000 troops to a 10,000-strong Liberty Brigade for joint ops against insurgents and proxy incursions. Drawing from Mali's 2023 Wagner pivot, now rebranded Africa Corps, which have jihadist attacks in Gao through drone strikes and local recruitment. Goïta pledged Russian Mi-28 helicopters for Ugandan borders, swapping US Black Hawks that come with strings of regime change whispers. For Museveni, a veteran of proxy wars from Somalia to South Sudan, this is seductive armor, bolstering his UPDF against ADF spillovers while shielding against ICC warrants painted as neo-colonial witch hunts. Yet it roils the pot. Kenyan intelligence reports circulating in Nairobi claim AES brigades could patrol Lake Victoria trade lanes, clashing with EAC naval patrols and spiking piracy risks. Western hawks are apoplectic. Pentagon leaks suggest a contingency surge to Ethiopia, while France's Le Monde splashed Goita's mercenary march. Uganda's fall? Human Rights Watch, from its Geneva perch, decries the pillar as junta fusion, citing Mali's 2025 extrajudicial killings of 150 alleged collaborators, a tally that could balloon if Uganda's security apparatus, already accused of torturing opposition, integrates AES re-education protocols.